Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce and we've got some news today, but this is my top shelf news where we talk about fantasy, science fiction, sometimes horror, and as they relate to books especially, but also media, because there's always lots of things going on. The biggest right now, I just had some good timing with my video on why you should not read Words of Radiance. It's a little bit of a joke here. Trying to make things easier so that you don't have to read the whole thing, but you probably should anyway because it really is worth it. Each year, if you don't already know, Sanderson does an update on his writing. Mostly that's the big thing, and it's kind of been evolving over the years to become more than that. But especially the writing as to what books have been published during the year, what he's been working on during the year. Typically what he likes to do is work on writing a book and then kind of mixing and editing the book that he's already written. And so there's usually at least a mix of at least a couple books going on in a given year, so he can kind of bifurcate that in his brain somehow, and that's how he relaxes is to go on to the next project. And as we know, he relaxed very well over COVID and gave us 4 secret novels that are coming out next year. Kind of got a big update on that. The big update on having the biggest Kickstarter ever. I don't know if that's a big deal or whatever. But it's kind of huge because he also, I think the biggest thing for the state of Sanderson is he announced we have the title for book 5, first of all. It's Knights of Wind and Truth, apparently. So he's trying to do the first is The Way of Kings. The second is Words of Radiance. But then we've got this one right here is Oathbringer. So I don't know what. Anyway, then there's Rhythm of War. I guess this is kind of in some naming scheme, but Oathbringer, I feel like I already messed that up, so I didn't need to stick with any naming scheme. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Knights of Wind and Truth. I think I'm warming to it. I don't love it right away, but I'm warming to it, and I can deal with that. That's fine. It did also mention later on down with the kind of, he actually goes into kind of a calendaring of what's up, what's next, and it looks like the 5th Stormlight book, that's what we've all been waiting for, the close to the first arc of the 10-book Stormlight Archive series is going to be coming out in 2024 in November. At least that's what it's slated on there. Who knows? It keeps getting pushed back every time I look, but it looks like he's been able to work on. This was kind of the year to work on the Stormlight book. That's what last year he said this was going to be. It kind of was that. It was at least a quarter of the year, it seemed like. There's a lot going on, and I get it. But he's having to kind of keep pushing things out. And it's as I can't blame it because, hey, these are 1,000-page books. I want them done right. I'm more than happy. And honestly, an extra year or 2 is not the end of the world, even though, really the original schedule, I think, would have at least the 5th book coming out next year, and now we're talking a whole little extra year we have to wait. That's small beans compared to some authors, so I'm not going to give it too hard to Mr. Sanderson, especially when he's got to do, again, all this he's been prepping. That's what a lot of the state of the Sanderson is, just all the prep work that's going into the Kickstarter. So speaking of the Kickstarters, I think it's pretty interesting. It looks like, almost like the easiest parts, because the hard parts are the binding the books, apparently. It's just there's shipping problems, there's weather problems, there's all kinds of issues with the actual hardbound and softbound books. It's the really easy ones, though, at least, are the ebooks and the audiobooks. And I thought it was interesting that he specifically was like, hey, look here, find, if you committed money to the Kickstarter, you pledged, then you're going to get a link, and you're going to be able to download not only the ebook, whatever version that you want that works on your Kindle or your whatever you have, but also the audiobook. And he's specifically not going through Audible, which is the kind of the biggest audiobook platform, and I get that, and it seems to be because and that's what he says. He outright says because he is concerned about them just having that monopoly. They're the biggest, and I get that, and I do love my Audible, but at the same time, it is concerning with just how much of a share of the market that they have. I don't want them abusing it. I would like to keep things nice and cheap, at least to a level that's not necessarily cheap, that it adequately gets people their money that worked on this, but also makes it so that I can buy more of these, right? Like I want to keep buying more and more. Having my Audible subscription, and so far so good. But I see, and I like that kind of, the big authors are the ones that are going to have to be the ones to kind of push that, and I appreciate that. But it is kind of funny because then later on in the State of the Sanderson post, there's multiple different links to other projects that are available on Audible. And usually Audible is kind of exclusive. I forget if they are exclusive. I'll put them up here if they are or not in my editing. Speaking of delays, one of the delays that was announced in the State of the Sanderson was the leather-bound version of the Words of Radiance. The Way of Kings leather-bound version did really well last time. And he kind of is like, look, I want to fulfill other Kickstarters first before starting a whole new Kickstarter and needing more to fulfill. He's like, we've got the manpower, and that's a lot of they talk about too in there is, we've gone from this small little company of Dragonsteel to this company of like 60 employees. It's that's on the bigger side. I think that's even where a lot of like federal rules and regulations start to hit. It's this whole thing is that there's more people, they have the infrastructure now. It's just that they want to actually fulfill things. Having committed to a couple and pledged to a couple of Kickstarters lately in Indiegogo, and because I just can't help myself, I can say I really appreciate that because it didn't, and part of the explanation is it's not going to delay the actual getting of the books. It's just delaying the actual start of the Kickstarter, which is like just them delaying getting their money, frankly. But what I've noticed and have been a little frustrated with is that with Kickstarters, like the name of the game with Kickstarters is delays. Like that's all it is. It's like a Kickstarter, I think you just have to know going in that you are committing to something that is not as firm as anyone is trying to make it. I don't think anyone's like lying to you with it either. There's probably plenty that are, but I think generally, especially with my book people, right? They wouldn't lie to me, hopefully. Maybe I'm too naive. I really do think there is every effort to like want to produce things at the right time that has been stated or promised or whatever. But it just, things always get in the way. And a Kickstarter you're not just buying from Amazon the book. The book hasn't even been produced yet. You're committing to the whole process once it gets funded. You're not just committing to like, okay, easily just get me my book, we're done. You're committing to a whole process, and the process is just obnoxious most of the time. Outside of the Kickstarter projects, there's one book getting published, and it's the conclusion of the it's the Skyward, the science fiction book series that he's been going on, and what's kind of cool is he's completed a couple of series this year. One is the second era of Mistborn, that's really a huge feat, and then there's even talk of, hey, now the next big project is going to be Era 3, which is the one I've really been excited for ever since understanding that kind of Mistborn was going to be this kind of, first it's a medieval kind of fantasy, and then it's going to be kind of a modern urban fantasy, and then like a science fiction one. And then Era 2 just became just a fun thing that was like, hey, why not also add Western into it? And so that's really cool. Anyway, that's really interesting. It'll be fun to see where Era 3 goes here now. I think that's going to be fun. That's when I've been really kind of waiting. Okay, maybe this is the time I need to actually read some Mistborn for once in my life. But that's exciting news. And then also the Alcatraz books got to finish this year, and so that's good. That's got to feel so good. I mean, let's be honest, especially when you're, and he also mentions the fifth, the final book of the first arc of the Stormlight Archive, and that's got to feel pretty good too. So that's exciting. More Brandon Sanderson, so much more Brandon Sanderson, more than you can even read. You probably can. I just cannot seem to keep up. And that's what I hope to do, especially with audiobooks coming out here. That's the tier I got. I got the audiobooks with the nice copies of the books. So I will be featuring those as they come out. I'll be doing videos on each one. That's the plan. Little kind of mini book hauls, so to say. Lots more Brandon Sanderson here. That's what we got here. So I know generally good, great, amazing news for everyone, and frankly, you know, and then there's also kind of some updates as to you know, some of the projects that he's always just kind of generally been talking about. What, you know, other Cosmere books, the Dark One, projects with Dan Wells, which again, I like Dan Wells as an author. I'm a little concerned when an author just starts to hand a lot over to other authors in their world. I don't love it. I just don't love the general idea, even though more Cosmere is probably a good thing. And then I thought it was interesting too to hear from Emily, his wife, who is, you know, co-owner of Dragonsteel, Queen as she calls it. I love that. And she just sounds delightful is all. And I just think she just brings so much fun. I have a literal close friend that had pictures of them just messing around at the Dragonsteel con, and they're with Brandon Sanderson's wife, Emily. And she's just like palling around with the fans, and she just seems so awesome, like so much fun, and what an awesome supportive spouse, but just like, and is just geeking out with the rest of everyone. Like, I just think that's so cool, and what a cool just team the Sandersons make, right? All right, finally, I'll get off my Sanderson here. Next is huge news for me. I learned this from Patrick, so I appreciate this, Patrick, because I feel like I've failed one of my favorite authors. But Matthew Woodring Stover's got big news here. Well, and it seemed like kind of a casual Twitter mention to a fan, but it's just one of those things that, you know, makes me happy. You always wonder, what's an author doing? But he is still and currently working on a Caine book. Caine, that's Heroes Die, Blade of Tishel, Caine Black Knife, and Caine's Law are the current 4 that are out. And then there's another one coming that's dealing directly with the aftermath of Caine's Law. So that's insanely exciting for me. Love Stover, love his work. I have not read an average book by Matthew Woodring Stover, even though I thought for sure a movie novelization would be that, and it was stellar. If you haven't read Revenge of the Sith, great way to learn and see how Matthew Woodring Stover can take even a book that's already has a plot. You already know the plot, you already know everything about it, you think, and he makes it so good, so entertaining, and just incredible. And that's an author to watch. And that is really, those are the biggest things that I wanted to talk about for this week. I know I already did some news this week, but I had to get some more in because we had a State of the Sanderson. This was intentionally going to just be a quickie, and then I found out some other news that I had to throw in really quickly. But State of the Sanderson, check it out. Check out Matthew Woodring Stover's work. And this will just be a 2-author news video. And we're already way longer than I intended it to be. So thank you so much. Thanks for liking and subscribing. Please do so if you have not. And we will catch you later. Bye.